All right, thanks, guys. And following Monday's sports wagering action, we're 2-0 in our last couple of extra daily picks on BrockPage.com. And if you want to access today's extra daily pick, the link for that play is in the description section below, and it's only going to cost you just $2.99. And as always, all the picks that I give out on my website are my personal bets, games that I personally have action on. And with that, guys, let's go ahead and dive into Wednesday's college basketball action. Pretty good slate. We're going to start with Arkansas versus Georgia. 7 o'clock Eastern start time on February 2nd, 2022. And for those who don't know, that's 2/2/22. It's only going to happen, once every 1,000 years, 1,100 years, something like that. But anyway, Arkansas is -9.5, totals 153. Now, Arkansas is playing just .500 basketball on the road this year, and they failed to cover recently against the likes of Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, and Mississippi State. Having said that, though, these guys are currently on a 6-game winning streak right now, and they're playing at a very high level. The Razorbacks are scoring 78 points a game this year, and they're also amongst the best in the SEC in offensive rebounding. Aldis Toney is averaging nearly 6 boards per contest. He's also scoring 11 points a game. Meanwhile, J.D. Notre, he's scoring over 18.5 points per contest himself, along with 4 boards and 3 assists. Now, defensively, on the other end of the court, the Razorbacks are allowing only 68 points a game. They're taking on a Georgia team who has just 6 wins all season long, and they're simply just giving up way too many points. They're just not good enough. The Bulldogs allow nearly 77 points per contest, and they also have a tough time guarding the field goal at home. Now, total-wise, Georgia has seen unders with Alabama, Auburn, and Vandy recently. Meanwhile, Arkansas went 4-2 to the under in their last 6 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Arkansas -9.5. in the under 153. Next matchup, it is going to be Butler versus Xavier, 7 p.m. East. Xavier's -13, totals 129.5. Xavier's 10-2 straight up at home this year, and they're actually scoring nearly 77 points a game there. Nate Johnson's making nearly 43% of his three-pointers. He's also scoring double-digit points a game. And speaking of scoring, Jack Nunge, he's the team's leading points getter with over 12.5 points a game, along with 7 rebounds. Now, when it comes to defensive play in this one, the Musketeers are limiting their competition to just 38% shooting from the field at home. They're taking on a Butler team who lost 6 out of their last 9, and they covered the number just 3 times during that span. Now, the Bulldogs are having some serious problems offensively this year. They're scoring only 62 points a game. They're amongst the worst in the Big East, the SEC in offensive. Big East, come on, dude. Big East. They're amongst the worst in the Big East in offensive boards. Now, total-wise, Butler saw games with Georgetown, Seton Hall, and DePaul recently fall under the number. Meanwhile, Xavier 7-2 to the under in their last 9. I'm going to lean towards Xavier -13 and the under 129.5. Next game, ACC action. I'm talking about Florida State versus Clemson, 7 o'clock East. Florida State's -4, totals 139. Now, the Noles got the W in 7 out of their last 10. And they've had pretty good success against Clemson in recent meetings. Having said that, though, Florida State failed to cover in 3 out of their last 4. And they do have a losing record on the road this year. And speaking of road games, the Noles are averaging just 67 points per contest when they travel. And that's certainly bad news for Florida State backers because Clemson's 7-2 straight up at home this year. And they're also limiting their opponents to just 64 points a game in the Little John Coliseum. And equally as impressive, Clemson's limiting their competition to just 39% from the field on their home court. Now, scoring-wise, P.J. Hall is averaging nearly 15 points a game, along with 6 rebounds. Meanwhile, David Collins, he's making nearly 47% of his three-pointers. He's also scoring 11 points a game. And speaking of offense in this one, the Tigers are amongst the best three-point shooting teams in the country. They're drilling over 42% of their three-pointers at home, and that actually puts them in the top 5 in the nation in that category. Now, total-wise, Clemson's 6-3 to the over on their home court. Meanwhile, Florida State saw 3 out of their last 5 get over the line. I'm going to lean toward Clemson +4 in the over 139. Next matchup, it is going to be Notre Dame versus Miami, 7 p.m. Eastern tip-off. Miami's -5 with the total at 144. Now, the Canes got the W in 8 out of their last 9 ball games, and they covered the point spread in 78% of those contests. Miami's also 9-2 straight up as the home, 9-2 straight up as the home team, and they're averaging 80 points a game in that same category. Cameron McGusty is scoring 18 points a game along with 6 boards and a couple of assists. Meanwhile, Charlie Moore, he's drilling 40% of his 3 balls, and he's also scoring 12.5 points a game. They're taking on a Notre Dame team who scores only 68 points per contest, and they struggle with offensive boards on the road. Meanwhile, defensively, the Irish are allowing nearly 72 points a game when traveling, and they're having some problems shutting down the 3-ball in that same category. Now, total-wise, 5 out of the Irish last 7 road games got over the line. Meanwhile, Miami's 64% to the over on their home court. I'm going to lean toward Miami -5 in the over 144. Next ball game, it is going to be Pitt versus Wake Forest, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. Wake Forest is -13, totals 134.5. Now, the Deacs won 6 out of their last 8, and they've also been almost unbeatable at home. Wake Forest is 12-1 straight up on their home court, and they're limiting their competition to just 38% shooting from the field there. Now, scoring-wise, Davian Williamson, he's drilling over 42% of his three-pointers. He's also averaging 13 points a game. Meanwhile, Londus Williams, he's scoring nearly 20 points a game himself, along with 6 rebounds and 5 assists. The Deacs are making nearly 50% of their field goals this season, and they're also scoring 81 points a game in front of their home crowd. They're taking on a Pitt team who lost 6 out of their last 9 themselves, and they've gotten the W in just 1 road game this season. And speaking of those road trips, well, these guys simply just don't score many points away from home. The Panthers are averaging only 58 points a game as the away team, and they're making only 39% of their field goals in that same category. These guys cannot buy a bucket when they travel. Must be something with their view, their field of vision when they're shooting the basketball. I don't know, but that is terrible. Now, total-wise, the Panthers did go 60% to the over in their last 10 meetings with Wake Forest. They also saw overs recently with Virginia, Boston College, and Louisville. Meanwhile, Wake Forest saw their last 4 straight get over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Wake Forest -13 in the over 134.5. Next ball game, it is going to be Purdue versus Minnesota, 7 p.m. Eastern tip-off. Purdue's -10.5, totals 143. And although the Boilermakers are traveling in this one, they're 7-2 in their last 9 away from their home court. And they're averaging over 84 points a game offensively, so really no hiccup here, with this team when they travel. Normally a lot of college teams, they don't travel well. That is not the case with Purdue. Now, they're also amongst the best three-point shooting teams in college basketball. They're making over 41% of their 3 balls this year, and they currently rank in the top 5 in that particular category. Jaden Ivey's making 44% of his shots from downtown. He's also scoring 16 points a game. Meanwhile, Sasha Stefanovic, he's making 42% of his three-pointers. Or is that Stefanik? I don't know how to say it. Stefanovic. But anyway, Sasha Stefanovic, he's making 42% of his three-pointers. And he's also scoring 12 points a game. The Boilermakers are also in the top 3 in offensive field goal percentage. They're taking on a Minnesota team who lost 6 out of their last 7. And they also do a pretty bad job covering the point spread at home. Now, the Gophers are currently just 3-7 against the spread at the Williams Arena. And they're scoring only 68 points a game there. Meanwhile, defensively, Minnesota's amongst the worst in the Big Ten in defensive rebounding. Now, total-wise, Minnesota saw unders recently with Wisconsin, Illinois, and Green Bay. They also averaged just 68 points a game in their last 10 meetings with Purdue. Meanwhile, the Boilermakers saw unders recently with Northwestern, Indiana, and Incarnate Word. I'm going to lean toward Purdue minus 10.5 and the under 143. Next matchup, it is going to be Rhode Island versus Fordham, 7 p.m. Eastern start time. Rhode Island's minus 4, totals 125.5. Now, Rhode Island's 12-7 thus far in the season, and they're doing a pretty good job guarding the 3-ball. Having said that, though, Rhode Island, they're on a 3-game losing streak, and they also have a losing record on the road. Now, Rhodey's biggest problem here is their inability to score. They're averaging only 66 points a game when they travel this year, and they're making only 27% of their three-pointers in that same category. Rhode Island's taking on a Fordham team who went 70% against the number in their last 10 outings. And they also have a winning record at home. Darius Quisenberry, he's scoring over 17.5 points a game, along with 4 boards and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Antonio Day Jr., he's scoring nearly 17 points a game himself, along with 3 boards and 3 assists. Now, Ford's averaging 73 points a game in front of their home fans. Fordham. Fordham, they're averaging 73 points a game in front of their home fans. When it comes to the total in this one, Fordham saw 6 out of their last 9 fall under the line. Meanwhile, Rhode Island, they saw their last 4 straight fall under the posted number themselves. I'm going to lean toward Fordham plus 4 and the under 125.5. Next contest, it is going to be St. Louis versus George Mason, 7 p.m. Eastern start time. The St. Louis Billikens are minus 1 with a total at 136.5. And even though the Billikens are favored on the road in this one, they do have a losing record on the road this year, and they're giving up 77 points a game in their travels. They're taking on a George Mason team who won their last 4 straight themselves, and they also went 7-2 against the spread in their last 9. Now, the Patriots have also been dominant at home this year. They're 8-1 straight up at the Eagle Bank Arena, and they're giving up only 58 points a game there. They're also limiting their competition to just 38% shooting from the field in that very same category. Now, Devontae Gaines, scoring-wise, he's making nearly 48% of his three-pointers this season. He's also averaging 11 points a game. Meanwhile, Devon Cooper, he's scoring over a dozen points a game himself. He's also drilling 42% of his 3 balls. And speaking of shooting in this one, well, when it comes to shooting the basketball, George Mason is making 48% of their field goals in front of their home crowd. Now, total-wise, my knee itches, sorry. Now, total-wise, we did see 8 out of these teams' last 10 head-to-head meetings get over the posted number. The Patriots are also 6-3 to the over in their last 9. Meanwhile, St. Louis, they saw 5 out of their last 7 away from their home court get over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward George Mason plus 1 and the over 136.5. Next ball game, it is going to be Temple versus ECU, 7 p.m. Eastern start time. ECU is minus 1, total's 135.5. But despite being the slight favorite at home here, the Pirates of ECU, they played some really bad basketball here recently. Now, the Pirates lost their last 4 straight, and they also dropped 6 out of their last 7. Now, offensively, the Pirates are shooting only 41% from the field. Meanwhile, defensively, ECU's allowing 71 points a game on their home court. And they're also amongst the bottom in their conference in home defensive boards. They're taking on a Temple team who won 4 out of their last 5 themselves. And they also have a winning record on the road. Now, the Owls have played very tough defensively away from home this year. They're giving up only 64 points a game away from their home court. And they're also holding their opponents to just 38% shooting from the field in that very same category. Khalif Battle, he's drilling 49% of his three-pointers. He's also scoring 21 points a game. Meanwhile, Damian Dunn, he's averaging over 15 points a game himself, along with 4 boards and a couple assists. Now, total-wise, 4 out of ECU's last 5 did fall under the line. Meanwhile, Temple's 4-1 to the under in their last 5 on the road themselves. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Temple +1 and the under 135.5. All right, next ball game I have for you. It is going to be Vanderbilt versus Kentucky, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. The Kentucky Wildcats are -16.5 with the total at 140. Now, the Wildcats have won 8 out of their last 10, and they're a perfect 13-0 straight up at home. Now, Kentucky's one of the best scoring teams in the nation. They're actually averaging 89 points a game at home this year, and they're making nearly 53% of their field goals in that same category. Oscar Tshiebwe, he's scoring over 16 points a game, along with 15 big rebounds. Meanwhile, Ty Washington is scoring 13 points a game himself, along with 3 boards and 4 assists. Now, the Wildcats are in the top 5 in offensive field goal percentage, top 15 in offensive boards. They're taking on a Vanderbilt club who lost 5 out of their last 7, and they successfully covered the point spread only once during that stretch. Now, the Commodores are currently shooting just 41% from the field, and they also average only 65 points a game on the road. Now, total-wise, when it comes to the number in this one, Vandy did see overs recently with Georgia, South Carolina, and Arkansas. Meanwhile, Kentucky saw 5 out of their last 9 get over the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Kentucky -16.5 in the over 140. Next ball game I have for you, it is going to be Bradley versus Northern Iowa, 8 p.m. Eastern tip-off. UNI is -3.5 at home with the total at 139. Now, the Northern Iowa Panthers got the W in 7 out of their last 9. And I'll tell you what, they scored a whole bunch of points in the process. Having said that, though, the Panthers failed to cover in 5 out of their last 6. And they're also covering in just 40% of their home games. So I'm really not particularly all that concerned about the straight-up record here. I'm just worried about the number. And these guys have not been covering. Now, defensively, UNI is allowing 70 points a game. They're taking on a Bradley team who's on a 4-game winning streak themselves. And they also went 6-1 against the spread in their last 7. Now, the Braves are giving up 65 points a game. And they're limiting their competition to only 39% shooting from the field. Now, scoring-wise, Malivi, Kings of Leons, is drilling nearly 41% of his three-pointers. He's also averaging double-digit points a game. Meanwhile, Terry Jake the Snake Roberts, he's averaging over 15.5 points a game, along with 5 rebounds and 4 assists. Now, total-wise, Bradley saw 4 out of their last 6 stay under the posted number. Meanwhile, UNI saw unders recently with Illinois State and Evansville. I'm going to lean toward the underdog Bradley Braves +3.5 and the under 139. Next ball game I have for you, it is going to be Illinois State versus Loyola Chicago, and that's going to be an 8 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Loyola Chicago is -14.5 with the total at 142. And although the Ramblers have won a bunch of ball games this season, they've covered the point spread in very few of them. As a matter of fact, Loyola failed to cover in 7 out of their last 8 outings, and they're also covering in just 22% of their home games. So this is a team who doesn't do well against the number, and this is a very, very large number in this spot here. And although these guys have played really good defensively this season, I'm not taking that away from them. These guys have been really good defensively. They actually have had some difficulties guarding the 3-ball at home. Like I said, a lot of concerns here for Ramblers backers. Now they're taking on an Illinois State team who does like to chuck it up themselves. They like to throw that 3-ball up. They're currently in the top 35 in the nation in offensive 3-point percentage. And they're led by Josiah Strong, who makes over 43% of his 3-balls. Meanwhile, Antonio Reeves, he's scoring over 20 points a game himself. And he's also drilling 40% of his 3-pointers as well. The Redbirds are averaging over 78 points per contest as a team. So although these guys haven't been incredibly impressive in the record book, in the win-loss column, these guys can score with the best of them. They can hang in there. Now, total-wise, Illinois State is 6-2 to the over when traveling this season. Meanwhile, Loyola's 8-1 to the over at Sister Jean's house. I'm going to lean toward Illinois State plus 14.5 and the over 142. Next ball game, it is going to be Tulane versus Houston, 8 p.m. Eastern start time. Houston's minus 16.5, totals 133. Now the Cougs are 18-2 overall for the season, and they play arguably the best defense in all the land. They're allowing only 53 points a game at home this year, and they lead the entire country in defensive field goal percentage. They're limiting their competition to just 34% shooting from the field at the Fertitta Center. That is an unbelievable stat. Now, scoring-wise, Marcus Sasser, he's averaging over 17.5 points a game, along with 44% shooting from three-land. Sasser's been really good shooting the long ball. Meanwhile, Kyler Edwards, he's scoring 14.5 points a game himself, along with 5 rebounds and a couple assists. Now, the Cougs score nearly 80 points a game in Houston. They're taking on a Tulane squad who has a losing record on the road, and they score only 68 points a game when they travel. Now, no surprise here, the Green Wave lost 8 out of their last 10 meetings with Houston. When it comes to the total in this one, 4 out of Tulane's last 6 road games fell under the posted number. Meanwhile, Houston saw 3 out of their last 4 fall under the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Houston minus 16.5 and the under 133. Next ball game, it is going to be Dayton versus VCU, 9 o'clock Eastern start time. Virginia Commonwealth is minus 4.5 at home with the total at 120. Now, VCU won their last 3 straight, and they've actually done a real nice job defensively at home. Having said that, though, these guys are scoring only 63 points a game in front of their home fans, and they're amongst the worst in college basketball in offensive rebounding. These guys simply have not been good enough on the offensive end of the court. They are good defensively, but they're certainly not built for a track meet. Now, they're taking on a Dayton squad who won 6 out of their last 7 themselves, and they rank in the top 5 in the entire country in shooting from the field on the road. Darren Holmes, he's scoring nearly a dozen points a game, along with 5 boards and 66% shooting from the field. Meanwhile, Tumani Kamara is scoring 10.5 points a game himself, along with 6 rebounds. And speaking of boards, Dayton is in the top 5 in the country in defensive rebounding per contest. They're also limiting their opponents to just 60 points a game. Now, total-wise, Dayton saw their last 6 straight all fall under the posted number. They're also 8-1 to the under in their last 9. Meanwhile, VCU, they are 7-2 to the under on their home court this year. I'm going to lean toward Dayton plus 4.5 and the under 120. Next matchup, it is going to be Florida versus Missouri, 9 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Florida's minus 5 with the total at 135.5. The Gators won 4 out of their last 6. They covered the point spread 5 times during that stretch. They're also limiting their competition to just 64 points a game. They're also doing a nice job of defending the 3 ball as well. Now, scoring-wise, Tyree Appleby, he's averaging double-digit points a game, along with 2 rebounds and 3 assists. Meanwhile, Flanders Fleming, he's scoring 10.5 points a game himself, along with 3 boards. Try saying that 10 times fast. Flanders Fleming, Flanders Fleming, Flanders Fleming. Anyway, Florida's taking on a Missouri team who lost their last 3 straight, and they also dropped 7 out of their last 9. Now, the Tigers have had significant problems scoring this season. They're averaging only 66 points a game, and they're shooting a measly 25% from beyond the arc at home. Now, total-wise, Mizzou's 5-1 to the under in their last 6 ball games, 60% to the under in their last 10 meetings with the Gators. Meanwhile, Florida's seen unders recently with Ole Miss, South Carolina, and LSU. I'm going to lean toward Missouri, plus 5, and the under 135.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Georgia Tech versus Virginia Tech, and that's going to be at 9 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Virginia Tech is minus 10, totals 132.5. Now, the Hokies failed to cover in 7 out of their last 9, and they had a tough time getting the W during that stretch. I do have some concerns about this very large number. Having said that, though, Virginia Tech does play some of the toughest defense in the ACC, and they're actually amongst the best shooting teams in the nation. As a matter of fact, the Hokies are in the top 3 in the NCAA in offensive three-point percentage. They're also making 42% of their three-pointers in Blacksburg. Hunter Couture, he's drilling 50% of his three-pointers this year. He's also averaging double-digit points a game. Meanwhile, Kaveh Aluma is the team's leading scorer with 15 points a night, along with 6 boards and a couple assists. Now, defensively, on the other end of the court, the Hokies are allowing only 60 points per contest at home. They've also done a real nice job grabbing defensive boards. They're taking on a Virginia Tech team who lost 6 out of their last 9. And I'll tell you what, they give up an awful lot of points. Did I say Virginia Tech team? They're taking on a Georgia Tech team who lost 6 out of their last 9. They gave up a ton of points this year on the road. The Yellow Jackets are actually giving up 76 points a game when they travel, and they're having a pretty tough time guarding the 3-ball away from home. Now, total-wise, 5 out of Georgia Tech's last 7 got over the line. They're also 3 under the over in their last 4 on the road. Meanwhile, Va Tech saw their last 4 straight get over the posted total themselves, 70% to the over in their last 10. I'm going to lean toward Virginia Tech minus 10 in the over 132.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Oklahoma State versus Kansas State, 9 o'clock East. K-State's minus 2, totals 128.5. And despite a rough stretch of games here recently, Kansas State is still playing solid basketball at home, and they're amongst the best defensive teams in the Big 12. The Wildcats are limiting their opponents to just 61 points a game in Manhattan. They're also in the top 15 in the nation in guarding the 3-ball at home. They're actually limiting their competition to just 26% shooting from 3-land in that category. They're taking on an Oklahoma State team who lost their last 3 straight themselves, and they also dropped 7 out of their last 10. Now, the Cowboys have also been pretty brutal on the offensive end of the court. They're scoring only 63 points a game on the road, and they're also making just 28% of their three-pointers in that very same category. Now, total-wise, Oklahoma State went 70% to the under in their last 10 ball games. Meanwhile, Kansas State went 4-2 to the under in their last 6 themselves. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Kansas State minus 2 in the under 128.5. All right, next ball game. A little ACC action. I'm talking about Syracuse versus NC State, 9 o'clock East. NC State's minus 1.5 at home, totals 155. Now, the Wolfpack, they did lose 7 out of their last 10, and they've certainly had their struggles defensively this year. Having said that, though, these guys still have a winning record on their home court, and they're averaging over 75 points a game there. Jericho Helms, he's making over 42% of his three-pointers this season. He's also scoring 15 points a game. Meanwhile, Darian Sebron is scoring over 18 points a game himself, along with 9 boards and 3 assists. They're taking on a Syracuse team who struggles defensively, and they struggle on the road. The Orange allows over 75 points a game, and they're amongst the worst defensive rebounding teams in the ACC. They also lost 5 out of their last 6 as the official road team as well. Now, total-wise, Syracuse saw overs recently with Wake Forest, Clemson, and Miami. They're also 7-3 to the over in their last 10 meetings with the Wolfpack. So if you're into historical trends, we have seen our fair share of overs between these two schools. Meanwhile, NC State, on the other side of things, they saw 3 out of their last 5 get over the line as well. 7-5 to the over at the PNC Arena. I'm going to lean toward NC State minus 1.5 and the over 155. Next contest, Big Ten action, Wisconsin, Illinois, 9 o'clock Eastern start time. Illinois 6.5, totals 140. Illinois won 8 out of their last 10 ball games this season. And they went 9-2 straight up this year at the State Farm Center. Having said that, no, I'm just kidding. Illinois is pretty good. Kofi Coburn, he's scoring over 21 points a game along with 11 rebounds. Meanwhile, Alfonso Plummer, he's scoring over 15.5 points a game himself, along with a couple of boards and 93% shooting from the stripe. Don't foul him. He's going to make you pay. Now, the Illini scores nearly 80 points a game in front of their home crowd. They're also in the top 20 in the country in offensive rebounding. They're taking on a Wisconsin team who failed to cover in their last 3 straight, with one of those games being an outright loss to Michigan State by 12. They lost to Sparty by 12 in that one. Now, Wisconsin's averaging only 68 points a game on the road this year. They've struggled offensively when traveling, and they're also shooting just 41% from the field in that same category. Now, when it comes to head-to-head meetings here, the Badgers averaged just 67 points a game in their last 10 contests against Illinois. When it comes to the total in this one, Wisconsin's 4-2 to the over on the road this season. Illinois 64% to the over at home. I'm going to lean toward Illinois minus 6.5 and the over 140. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup of the show. It is going to be Villanova versus Marquette, and that's going to be a 10 o'clock Eastern start time. Villanova's minus 4, totals 132.5. Now, the Wildcats won 9 out of their last 10 ball games, and they've also got a 700 win percentage this year on the road. They've been playing very good away from their home court. Now, Nova's limiting their opponents to just 60 points a night, and they're also in the top 25 in the country in road defensive field goal percentage. Now, scoring-wise, Colin Gillespie, he can pretty much do it all. The senior's averaging over 17 points a game, along with 3 rebounds and 3 assists. Now, Colin's also shooting over 90% from the stripe this year. He's also knocking down 43% of his 3 balls. And speaking of three-pointers, Justin Moore, he's draining nearly 40% of his shots from beyond the arc himself. Moore's also averaging 15.5 points a game. Now, the Wildcats are currently first in the country in shooting from the stripe. They're taking on a Marquette team who's done a nice job recently straight up, but they're covering in only 50% of their ball games as the home team. Now, I realize they did beat Nova in their prior meeting, but tough to beat Villanova twice in the same season. I'm sorry. It's just very difficult. Now, the Golden Eagles are also amongst the worst in the Big East in defensive rebounding at home. When it comes to the total in this one, Marquette did see overs recently with DePaul, Georgetown, and UConn. Meanwhile, Villanova saw unders recently with Georgetown, Butler, and Seton Hall. I'm going to lean toward Villanova minus 4 and the over 132.5. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our quick pick recap. Powered to you by my website at brockpage.com, where we are 2-0 in our last 2 extra daily picks following Monday's sports wagering action. I like Arkansas minus 9.5 under 153. Xavier minus 13 under 129.5. Clemson plus 4 over 139. Miami, Florida, the Hurricanes minus 5 over 144. Wake Forest minus 13 over 134.5. Purdue minus 10.5 under 143. Fordham plus 4 under 125.5. George Mason plus 1 over 136 and a hook. Temple Owls plus 1 under 135.5. Kentucky Wildcats minus 16.5 over 140. The Bradley Braves plus 3.5 under 139. Illinois State plus 14.5 over 142. I also like Houston minus 16.5 under 133. The Dayton Flyers plus 4.5 under 120. Give me Missouri plus 5 under 135.5. I also like Virginia Tech minus 10 over 132 and a hook. Give me Kansas State minus 2 under 128.5. NC State minus 1.5 and the over 155. Illinois minus 6.5 over $1.40. And with my next and final free pick for the video, I'm going to lean toward Villanova minus 4 and the over 132.5. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on brockpage.com. Now, if you guys do end up getting a membership here today on my website, just keep in mind, you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. So I always tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. It's very early in the month right now. Now is the time to strike. Now, if you guys want to get access to every single bet that I make, well, you may want to think about joining my board member tier package. Board members get access to every single pick that I give out on that website all the way through the end of February. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. I really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Tuesday or Wednesday to you, depending on when you're watching this. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at brockpage.com.